The tip for this week is placing bar increases in Stockinette. And when would you do this? Well, most frequently for a sleeve, or if you're working a sweater from the top down, maybe at the neckline. That's where you're working increases most frequently, unless it's some specific design pattern. And notice in this case that there are two stitches to the left of the increase on the left side, and there are 2 stitches to the right of the increases on the right side. This is a symmetrical mirrored placement. This is what you're looking for. Now, while we're looking at this swatch, let's look at some of the drawbacks. First of all, these increases are very noticeable. The bar, and also you will have a little hole below that bar. That's virtually impossible to get rid of in Stockinette. Also, the stitch below the increases, where the increase is made, is small. And that's because you're using 1 stitch to make 2 stitches, and it's going to reduce the size of that stitch. But if you are going to use bar increases, this is the proper placement. Now let's look at a swatch where there is improper placement. On this swatch, the increases are not mirrored. On the right side, there are 2 stitches, but on the left side, here there are 2 stitches, over here there are 3 stitches. And I always like to tell my students that the eye expects symmetry, and when there isn't symmetry, you're going to look at it and try and figure out why it isn't symmetrical, and you're noticing it. Ideally, when you're placing increases, they should be unnoticeable. Now, another way that you never, ever, ever want to place increases is in the selvage stitch. First of all, this is just downright ugly. The selvage sides are bumpy, but imagine if I were trying to pick up stitches or seam along this edge line. I've got these little purl bumps that are a stitch in, and you always want to maintain 1 stitch as a selvage, at least 1 stitch as a selvage, for finishing or picking up stitches. It just makes it easier and it looks nicer. You have a nice clean line. This, you cannot have a clean line. Now on this side, you've got the purl bump to the left, and it is just ugly. It would be easier to seam this side and to pick up stitches, but it wouldn't be symmetrical. Imagine if you were doing a top-down sweater and that was your neckline. You would have to go a couple of stitches in order to get a symmetrical line, and it would still look lumpy and bumpy. Now, how do I determine this? It's easy on the right side to go for symmetry. I've decided on this swatch I want my increases to have 2 stitches on either side. So I knit my stitch, and remember that a bar increase is going to put the bar immediately to the left of the stitch that you're knitting. So if I want 2 stitches to the right of my increase, I work that increase in the 2nd stitch, and that's going to put the bar to the left of that stitch, and I'll have my 2 selvage stitches. Now over here, if you're thinking, oh, I want 2 stitches, what would happen if I made the stitch in that stitch? There would be 1 stitch because the bar is going to appear there. So where I actually want to make the increase on the left side is in the 3rd stitch. And that is going to leave 2 stitches to the left. And you can see that it's going to be symmetrical. It requires a little bit of thought. Now you can use this increase when you want something to be a little more decorative. But otherwise there are better increases, the make one and the lifted increase, which will be more invisible, and they're a little easier to place symmetrically.